Welcome to PMI Manitoba's podcast series, Keeping It Real, where we talk about real stories, project insights, and community success. Here's our episode 8, entitled as People, Purpose, and Community Power, with a special guest, Lora Meseman. She's an executive director at General Council of Winnipeg Community Centers. And this podcast is hosted by me, your host today, Shubha Junaid from PMI Manitoba's news desk. Hello, welcome to the show where we sit down with leaders who are making a real impact in our community. Today, we are honored to have a guest whose career journey is a masterclass in leadership, empathy, and making a difference. From the fast paced world of corporate advertising to the heart of the nonprofit sector, she's a true inspiration. Please join me in welcoming Lora Meseman, the Executive Director of the General Council of Winnipeg Community Center. Welcome, Lora.
Thank you so much. That's very kind and generous of you. Thank you.
Laura, so it's pleasure. Before we dive into your incredible journey, let's start with a simple but important question. Can you tell us about yourself a little bit? I'm sure many of the Winnipeggers must know you, but most of the audience who are quite new and looking at our podcast for the first time, would you like to tell us about yourself? Who is Laura beyond the resume?
Oh, 100%. I'm a grandmother. My favorite title of all.
Wow.
I have my husband and I have 6 children between the two of us, and we have three lovely grandchildren. 4 lovely grandchildren. 4. We have a 8-month-old. So my background has always been in marketing and advertising in the corporate world. I've worked in retail advertising for many years, and after a long career at an organization, the company closed. So I found myself in 2018 looking for new work after 24 years. And I started my own business, and I took advantage of an opportunity and a dream to work in nonprofit. So that's where I am today.
That's great. Looking at your 30 years experience in marketing, communication, and leadership in the corporate world, and you make a significant shift to the non-profit organization. Can you tell us some of the experiences that shaped your approach to leadership, especially now in the current role at GC?
Good for you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, that word. Yeah, in my corporate experience, I was very lucky in that I was able to grow in my position. I worked for the same department for almost the full time that I was there, but I worked for an amazing boss that became my mentor, another strong female in a leadership role. But I will say that during my time in my early career, I worked in very much male-dominated organizations. And in the early 80s, when I started out, it was uncommon for young women to make their way up the ladder. It was a little bit harder. And we were also always competing. There was always a competition for work. There is now, but in terms of growth. But when I landed my job with the company called TrueServe Canada, I really was given an opportunity to grow. And I attribute that to my former boss, who recognized my skill level and really wanted to see me expand and utilize the skills that I had. And I will always be grateful for that. And so I've taken what I learned through her and encouraged others to grow. And in nonprofit, it's a challenge because in nonprofit, funding is tighter.
Yes.
Yeah. And often, as much as we want to, it's hard to pay people at a level that they truly deserve because of the challenges that you face with funding. And so I think we have to become creative in rewarding our employees and even our volunteers in
Yeah.
finding ways to be flexible, finding ways to encourage them, giving them more opportunity to grow, even if it means that you might only keep them for a few years employed with you. It is a much different situation than in the corporate world where the funding is much different, a different structure.
Totally got it. And Laura, with listening all of this, I bet the executive director role at GCWCC, you are tasked with a huge challenge supporting over 60 unique community centers under one umbrella. How do you approach that? What does that look like? Like day to day, how do you approach a day with all of the volunteer and the staff with you?
Yeah, let me describe a little bit about what we do at the General Council of Winnipeg Community Centers. We are essentially an association. So the community centers are members of our association. So day to day, it will look different based on what the need is of that particular community center. Each individual community center is independently incorporated and has their own board that govern the community center. And they also might have employees. So not only are we dealing with or supporting the volunteers, but we're also supporting general managers or facility managers or caretakers in navigating the role at the community center. And so it can be a challenge. Some community centers have issues with financials. They might have issues with recruiting volunteers. And we have a small team at our office. So we're each assigned essentially a role, but we all have learned how to navigate each other's jobs, if you will. And that's the challenge that you face with nonprofit. You have to be able to be flexible and be nimble and to be reactive, because often the issues that pop up, they're just a surprise. So one day it might be really quiet and not a lot of phone calls or emails. And so we can work on our other projects, and other times there might be an incident or an emergency, and we work closely with the city of Winnipeg. So it can look so different. Really can.
Yes. Sounds like very dynamic. Like you never know what's coming next day. It's not a set schedule or a set working procedures that one can follow. So quite a challenging. And that leads to my next question, Laura. When you think about all those centers and their unique needs, what does a successful community center look like to you 2025 or maybe beyond? What are the key ingredients for success?
Great question as well, because we recently had approved through City Council a new strategic action plan into 2045, where we've identified 4 key categories, and that is programming, financials, facilities, and volunteers, people. And that might be volunteers and staff. And so when each of those categories are checked off, if you will, that becomes the recipe for a successful community center. And a great group of people who work well together, it's going to be like that at any team, whether you're an employer or you're a volunteer or you're an employee.
Yeah.
When there's a good group, a strong group of cohesively working together individuals, that makes a huge success. We have a number of community centers that might struggle in one of each of those categories. So that's our role, and that's also the role of the City of Winnipeg to help, lift them up in those areas to ensure that we have a successful community center. But honestly, secretly, I think they're all successful in their own way.
Since this is Project Management Institute, PMI Manitoba's, I would like to know your opinion about the leadership skills. Do you think that it is like most important or crucial skill to have to manage all those centers across Canada, especially in Manitoba?
Yeah. These specific community centers, the 63 community centers, are all located in Winnipeg.
Wow.
But I have worked in an organization where we had small independent retailers right across Canada. So project management, it doesn't matter what role you're in, project management is key. And I would say that at a management level or leadership level, understanding project management is important. and respecting a project manager if you are lucky enough. So let's be clear, not all organizations have a project manager.
Yeah.
But you could say, like I started out as a program coordinator, and then I moved into a national marketing coordinator. And with each of those roles, I had to run a project with a critical path. Back in the time that I was in those positions, we didn't have the ability with computers, if you can imagine that. So Gantt charts weren't a thing, but we still tracked them with dates and times and staying on deadline. And honestly, I worked in advertising and marketing all my life. There was always a deadline. And if you're not on deadline, you miss a deadline and you're sending out a flyer to print, that can mess up the whole series of actions that need to happen. So I think as a leader, it's important to understand the role that it takes to manage a program, because everything you do every day, essentially, you're checking off a task.
Yes. And I guess not only in those times, with the invention of computer making life easier for this generation, what do you think about the communication? What one communication principle you think every leader should master, especially in a community or volunteering setting?
Keeping people apprised of what's going on. There is nothing worse than working in silos and one department is doing one thing and another department is doing something completely different, and they don't collaborate or work together. And especially when you're working on a big project. Again, I worked for large organizations. I used to work for Rona at one point. And if one department isn't talking to the marketing department, so for example, the merchandising department is not talking properly to the marketing department, it's very difficult to plan and project sales. It's very difficult to work together to launch new products. So communication is key. Keeping everybody, you don't have to have a meeting for everything, but you certainly need, and certainly with all the tools that are out there, you know, whether it's Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever, just keeping people up to date. I think that's important.
Yeah. So you also facilitate from like broad boardroom meetings to casual community conversation. How do you adapt your communication style across such different audiences? Do you keep in mind like to whom I'm going to talk to? Who is my audience? All those principles, do you keep in mind, Lora, before going out and speak about your agenda for the meeting or maybe some communication or information to spread across the community?
I think understanding the audience is key. Just like in marketing, understanding your target audience is incredibly important when you're marketing to a segment. So understanding who you are going to speak with and connecting with them up front before the meeting starts. General welcoming, maybe a conversation about what's going on in their life, just connecting with people. I think that's critical. Having that connection, even if you don't know them, just say hello. How was your day? And before you get started, that chit chat just before a meeting, regardless of who I'm working with, I think that's important to make people feel comfortable. And when I'm facilitating an event, which is something that I do regularly, especially online events, not everybody is comfortable with technology. So, you know, meeting with them up front. Do you understand how to use Zoom? Do you know how to mute and unmute? Just talking to them.
Yes.
As a regular person.
Little things which we consider like mute, unmute, sharing your screen or how. Yes, exactly. That's very important. Not everyone is on the same page if we are talking about using like Zoom or Teams or any other communication platforms. Thank you so much.
I will say, if I can add, like I've worked with people who are young, like us, and I've worked with some of the 55 plus, even into the 90s. I've worked with grandmothers who've said, oh, I can't do this. You just talk them through it and encourage them, and their grandchildren will help, and they do it. So technology feels scary, but it doesn't have to be scary if you just work with them closely.
Yes. Okay, off the topic maybe, does all of this communication, especially to the generation who are not very handy or friendly with the technology, how do you plan your communication with this age group of people? Do you prepare yourself before the meeting, or it just happens spontaneous? How do you prepare yourself for such kind of audience group?
I ask questions ahead of time. I ask questions about who the group is that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, in terms of facilitating, let me use an example. If I'm doing an annual general meeting for a condominium corporation, I will speak with the project manager or the property manager, which is like a project manager, and ask them about, how many units, what's the age range. And then when I do the registration, I ask them if they're familiar with the technology that we're using. If they are not, and they answer no, I'll reach out to their property manager and say, listen, here's the list of people who are not comfortable. Can we get them in another unit to work with, to sit with another person who is comfortable? Or can we arrange for a room, like a meeting room where a group of people can sit together to do it? So if we can anticipate those challenges, it does make it a little bit easier. I will say you can't anticipate everything, and you will always have challenges, but I've gotten so far as to get them on the telephone and coach them through it. So there are ways to get around it. I think you just have to remain calm and think outside the box.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lora. And I know not only with the community center, you also share your knowledge with next generation as an instructor at the University of Winnipeg PACE program. What do you most enjoy about teaching emerging professionals?
I find it incredibly inspiring. I love it. I unfortunately can't dedicate as much time to teaching as I would love to. So I usually take 1, maybe 2 classes at most during a year. But I'm amazed by the individuals who enroll in these programs. And I learn probably more from them than they do from me. I just find it so inspiring. And many of the students that are involved in PACE are newcomers to Winnipeg. And to me, that's demonstrates such courage and bravery to move to a new city and to enroll in a program that they don't know anybody. Talk about nerves. And so breaking the ice with them, listening to their stories, I always like to ask them to come and meet me and introduce themselves. Take a couple minutes, introduce, I want to know more about you so that I can tailor what I do for them. But I love it. I love the people. I get such a charge. I'll tell you, by the end of the day, though, I'm exhausted. I'm like, okay, I need to go home.
And I guess that's your personality, Lora. That's why coming from the corporate world, working so long, and you made a very smooth transition for profit organizations. That must be one of the traits that help you a lot to going along with people and community. And that leads me another question. Since you're a lifelong learner, Lora, what's one thing you have learned recently, formally or informally, that's influenced your work or your perspective?
So good. I got involved with this organization that teaches governance. So governance is my new thing. So I've been quite involved. Obviously, I work in nonprofit. Most nonprofit organizations, they have a board of directors. And I had always volunteered on a board, but didn't truly understand when I first got involved the role of a board of director and the responsibilities that it takes to be on a board. And so I did some courses through this organization, and I earned my professional director designation. And it's every 3 years you have to continue to do courses to keep that designation. I find that one of the most fascinating things I've done. And in fact, I've submitted a nomination form to participate on a local board. I can't say whether or not I'll be nominated or elected or not, but I'm excited about that opportunity and looking at it from a different perspective. So that is one thing.
Yeah. So with your professional director and not-for-profit governance certificates, you have a deep understanding of what makes a board tick. What principles do you believe are absolutely essential for effective board governance?
I think in terms of board of directors, it's really important for the board to truly understand their role. It is very easy for board members to choose to micromanage individuals that are in the organization that are actually the employees of the organization. And I'm not speaking from experience because I'm very lucky. The board that I report to does not micromanage at all. But I think it's important to create that clear, distinct line between the role of the board in terms of approving budgets, looking at strategic planning, future forecasting, managing risk, and in terms of how they're going to go out into the community and explain what they do, but not getting into the nitty-gritty, making sure that the executive director or the general manager or whomever that reports to them has the autonomy to go and actually perform the tasks that they assign. And so that makes a big difference. When boards get too deep into the weeds or get in the kitchen and start doing the work, it can topple a good organization.
It sounds very overwhelming also, Lora. So at times I think you come up with very heavy days. Can I ask you what keeps you motivated to show up another day, whether spending a heavy day at work the past days and the next day to show up with the same kind of energy and to influence and motivate people around you? How do you cope up, like your cope up mechanism or the strategy to remain consistent with your work?
That's a great question. There are definitely, I think every day is a good day. Some days are more challenging than others. And I do get frustrated and sometimes feel defeated.
Yeah.
But you know what? Getting a good night's sleep, walking my dog, exercise, that makes a big difference. And getting up every day is a new day. It's not always easy. Let's not, pretend that it's not. Everybody deals with challenges, whether they're in their personal life or even at work. And yes, it can be discouraging when a nonprofit, when there's challenges or something wrong happens and you can't fix it. That can be discouraging. But you know what? You just have to keep moving on. And I think really, honestly, going back to my ability or my opportunity to work with PACE and work with young people and to work with volunteers to see how passionate they are and how excited they are about the future, it's hard not to get caught up in that and be excited.
Thank you so much, Lora. It's absolutely pleasure listening all of this because I myself is very much into volunteering, trying to get myself for the community in whatever way possible with my time and energy. So to wrap up things here, I want to ask you about the future. What's one project or vision you're most excited about right now, either professionally or personally, if you wanted to share with us?
I mentioned at the top of our interview the Plan 2045 Strategic Action Plan. It is a 20-year action plan that was recently approved by City Council. I'm excited about that. I will say that volunteerism has changed, but I work for a group of community centers whose purpose is recreation and leisure. And I want to keep in mind, we were just talking about the difficult days, and mental health is so important. And more and more you're going to hear about social prescribing. Doctors actually prescribing working out or joining a community center. Community centers and community organizations, whether they're city buildings or not, any community center or organization where you can volunteer, that's really important for your mental health. And I think what I'm the most excited about is to see how we can evolve volunteerism. It's much different than it used to be. And we've been working with the Volunteer Canada, Volunteer Manitoba, and a number of other groups. And we're all feeling the same kind of challenges, but really understanding the role that volunteers play in community is really exciting. I think it's exciting because we have so much to offer our community and our residents. And, it's true. We need more positive in this world, and we need more opportunity to celebrate each other. And what a better way when you're working with community.
And if I may ask you one last question, if you could transfer or if you could pass on one lesson to the next generation or to the next project management professionals who are just learning this skill, what would be?
One thing, I'm going to tie it into two. Listening. The skill of listening is so important. And I think from a project management perspective, project managers face a big uphill battle, especially if they're new to an organization. They're going to get a lot of pushback. They're going to be asking for information, and people are going to say, I don't have time for that. But if you stop and listen and understand why they don't have time, you'll understand how you can help them get you that information. So that skill of listening and empathy is so important.
And both are underestimated. Like, we always talk about communication, talking, like to express yourself. And we often forget how important it is to listen carefully. Yes, true. I 100% resonate with this lesson. And Lora, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. It's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure for me, and I hope for our audience who are listening to this podcast. Thank you so much, Lora.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take good care.
Thank you.